Hello dear chess friends of International Chess School. In this lecture I will continue to show you how to use the exchange sacrifice when you are defending. The position is extracted from a game played in 1966 at Havana between the top grandmasters at the time, Bent Larsen from Denmark and Tigran Petrosian from USSR. Probably black just played f6, trying to disturb that annoying knight from e5. But Bent Larsen, which is a very aggressive player, immediately noticed that the rook from e8 is undefended. So he played the queen h5, using the consequence of black's last move. Now the question for black is how to defend. To use the passive defense, the direct defense, which means holding the lines. The moves for direct defense will be rook e7, defending the rook and protecting f7 against the queen f7, or g6. Let's see what will happen in both cases. If g6, it is not recommended to spoil pawn structure in front of the king, because the pawns can't turn back, and as a consequence a lot of weak squares will remain behind those pawns. White can simply continue with bishop takes, h takes, knight takes, and if black plays now knight b6, white can continue with f4 followed by rook f3, rook g3, bringing the rook in attack and aiming to create a local forces superiority. But if knight takes g6, queen takes, king f8, bishop h6, king e7, rook ae1, the king's flight in this case doesn't help. The king doesn't reach a safer position, and during this trip he will lose a huge amount of material. What's happened if black uses the other method of passive defense, of direct defense, defending the rook and the square f7? Knight f3, knight b6, a3, aiming to play bishop b4, a5, rook ae1, bishop e6, knight h4, g6, queen h6, and beside the weakened pawn structure in front of the king, the weakened king, black has a lack of coordination between his forces, while white can simply use the advance f4, f5. If black decides to push f5 himself, then the e5 square will become vulnerable, and the bishop from e6 will be completely hemmed behind the black pawns. So after queen h5, what do we have to do? We have to use indirect defense, the active defense, and the easiest way is the method of elimination. We have to remove one of the attackers. In this case, removing the knight from e5 means sacrificing an exchange. Rook takes e5, d takes e5, f takes e5. Suddenly, we have an imbalance in the position. Black sacrificed the exchange for one pawn, but in return he gained a better control over the central squares e4 and d4 and the adjacent ones f4 and c4. He disturbed the coordination between white's pieces, defended against the immediate attack on f7, and he obtained a strong pawn center. Now white has to change his plan. He must change his to-do list. He must stop continuing the attack on the king side, because in the absence of a stable center, any wing attack is meant to fail. He should have played f3 in order to prevent the annoying advance e5, e4. Otherwise, if black pushes e4, he will gain the important square e5, as it happened in the game. Rook fe1, e4, bishop f1. So, not only that black repelled white's attack, but soon afterwards he reduced white's pieces to passivity. The bishop from f1 is a useless piece for the moment. Knight f6, queen h4, bishop f5, queen g3. This is a good idea for white to trade the queens, and in order to reach a favorable endgame where he can use the fact that it is an exchange up and he has the pair of bishops. So black should avoid the queen's trade. Queen e7. Now choosing between c3 or bishop c3 proved to be a difficult task. Bishop c3 was to be preferred, since black pieces have to support the advance of the central pawns, but at the same time, after bishop c3, black has to be careful. The queen and the bishop from c3 are working together in stressing the g7 focal point, and white threatens to play something like queen g5, h4, g4, and continue to restrict and to outflank black's powerful center. For example, after knight g6, queen g5, bishop d7, and h4, or after bishop c3, if knight e6, now the knight will be overburdened. It has to support d4 and to defend g7, rook a d1, rook d8, queen e5, bishop g6, f3, and once black's powerful center undermined, white will have the advantage. Knight d7, queen g3, e takes f3, g takes f3, and the position is clearly in white's favor. Instead, white played c3. He used the direct defense instead of an active one. In the active defense, you have to figure it out correctly, the opponent's threats, and try to mobilize your pieces. In this case, the bishop from d2 didn't play any role. It's out of play, an unstable position, and it may hamper a future rook on d1. Not e6. Now black's position is perfectly playable. White is thinking that his position is winning, but you can't win if you don't design a correct to-do list. He start moving, shuffling the pieces, while black mobilizes his forces under the shelter of pawns. Bishop e3, knight g4, h3, knight takes e3. The advantage of the pair of bishops is gone now. Rook takes. Usually when the trend of the game changes this way, it is very difficult for white, for the side in advantage to adapt to the new conditions. Rook f8, queen e5, bishop g6, rook d1, queen f7, rook d2, knight f4. Objectively speaking, white is not in danger, but it is pretty difficult to activate the light square's bishop, as it is difficult to exchange the major pieces. b4, h6, a4, bishop h7, queen d4, b6. It is important to keep the pawn structure flexible, not a6, which which gives white the chance to create a blockade on the queen side, and it leaves uncontrolled the b6 square. So b6, in order to keep the pawn structure flexible. Black's compensation for the exchange is this massive pawn center, and he wanted to use this central pawns in order to create a free pawn. If g3 now, knight takes knight d3, bishop takes, e takes d3, and again for the exchange down, black has a dangerous pawn on d3 and a certain domination over the light squares. And again, after b6, white played rook e1. He keeps moving the pieces. How to support c5? In such cases, you will display the more flexible piece there. So the queen, not the rook, on c8. If we have to choose between queen c7 or rook c8, then queen c7, and not queen e7, which will be exposed to X-ray pressure along the e5. Queen e3, c5, b takes, g3, knight e3. Eventually we reach to this pair of moves, g3, knight e3, bishop takes, e takes d3, queen e6, check. Now c4 is absolutely necessary to prevent black from connecting his pawns with c5, c4. Usually when you have the material advantage, in the first place you have to prevent the enemy counterplay. You can't play for a win if you don't pay attention to the opponent's threats. Now after d takes e4, rook c1, queen f7, queen takes c5, white is able to organize the defense, and if the c4 pawn falls, then black would be in terrible danger. So such in-between moves like c4 with the idea of regaining the pawn later with rook c1 are good defensive techniques, using the fact that the bishop is on h7 instead of g6. If the bishop were on g6, after c4, d takes c4, black would have the possibility to play bishop f7, which doesn't exist in the actual position. Queen e6 check, queen f7, queen takes, king takes. Now black is on top, and he won quickly the game. Rook b2, c4. As we are approaching the endgame, the values of the pawns increases, and if white's rooks are reduced to passivity, then the exchange up it isn't felt. f3, d4 meant to create a free duo of pawns. Rook c1, king e6, king f2, bishop e4, f4, the only move, rook e8, g4, bishop c6, rook e1, king d5, bishop takes, rook takes, bishop takes, c takes d4, c3, rook b8, d2, rook d8, king c4, rook c8, and king d3. Usually when two free pawns arrives on the third rank, the rook can't prevent their promotion. In this case, black has also an extra bishop. As it happens often, the exchange sacrifice is not a magic trick which will win the game on the spot, but it will help you reject the opponent's attack, and at the same time will bring imbalances in the position, will help you change the character of the position, and this is the most important thing to do when you are defending. Till our next lecture, best